Hey fam jam, welcome to the relationship series season 8 finale. I am your host Genevieve, and this episode is called Girl, Leave That Mother Wound Alone. Now, a mother wound is not a clinical diagnosis. It is an attachment therapy term. A mother wound is an attachment wound resulting from disruptions, deficiencies, or trauma in the mother child bond. And it usually looks like a lack of secure attachment. Usually, it's stemming from a primary caregiver who was emotionally unavailable, who was inconsistent, who was rejecting. And the deficit leaves a lasting impact on adults' self worth, sense of self esteem, self confidence, emotional regulation, and obviously relationship patterns. So attachment therapy has to do with how we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see ourselves in relation to others, and then, of course, how we see others in relation to ourselves. So, again, not a clinical diagnosis, but it's a concept which within attachment therapy, focusing on childhood attachment disruptions, where children receive physical support and care, but not necessarily emotional attunement, emotional safety, or sense of love. So, I have come from a place of complete ignorance to a place of having some information. Now, I told you guys I was going to invite you into my process, and here I am. I don't know a lot. I don't know everything there is to know about mother wounds, but I do know that I have an experience that is very common, when it comes to mother woundedness. So before I had language, I had this experience. And so I knew something was going on. So I'm trying to connect the language to the experience and share with you about the process that I'm in. And I'm in the middle. I haven't started this. I haven't had a conversation with my mother. I don't know what's going on. I am here learning and growing. So I know that when I was in the womb, my mother was about 8 months pregnant. And from what I've heard, and I'm describing to you some of the background, some of what can contribute to mother woundedness. Okay, so let me just tell you the story and then you guys can pick and choose what you want from it. My mother was pregnant with me in Canada. So this is a foreign country from her birth. My mother had my brother, who was about 14 months old at the time. From what I know of the story, my father was somewhere else entirely in another country. And I actually found out recently because I received some documentation from my great grandparents and their passing. So my great grandmother would have passed 1 week before I was born. So 1 week before my mother actually went into labor. And if you guys know anything about Afro-Caribbean families, grandparents are a very significant part of child rearing, of upbringing, and so on, passing on family traditions, passing on old stories and ways of being and beliefs and so on. Values is a big thing. So her grandmother, my mother, her grandmother would have just died. And so she was grieving. She's pregnant. She's caring for a young child. She's alone. She's also studying. She's working and she's surviving. I have this context now. And as I think back to the time of my birth, I understand what was going on more. And then there's me. I'm born and I was born in distress. And my mother shared with me that she had gone to the hospital and they had said she had to have a C-section and she was stressed out about that. She didn't want to have a C-section. And then from sheer stress, really, I was born. And I was born almost as asphyxiated. I was almost dead. Okay. No, I was born with the umbilical cord around my neck. I could barely breathe. The blood vessels in my eyes had burst. A lot of things happened, a lot of traumatic things around my birth. But then here I am. I'm out. I'm safe. I'm taken home. And let me just give you the context. So by 8 months old, I had a passport. And before I could even fully attach to my mother throughout this traumatic and stressful and grieving and surviving and alone and heavy, overwhelming time, I was sent away. So I go to Barbados to my Auntie Mavis and my Uncle Dave, and they loved me and they cared for me. And I say that not to say that my mother didn't love me or care for me. I say that to say that the context in which I was sent was very warm, very welcoming for me. So they loved me, they cared for me, they nurtured me, and I learned a lot there. I learned how to walk there, I learned how to talk there, I learned how to tie my shoes there or tie a bow in my dress there. I learned how to be there. I learned a lot. These are the formative years. And from what I've learned about attachment theory, is that those formative years are extremely important for development in terms of understanding who we are and understanding that we can ask for help, that we can trust people in the world, that we are lovable, that we are desirable, that we are worthy, that we are deserving, that our feelings matter, that our needs matter and will be met. So that period of time, this is pre-verbal, starts in the pre-verbal season. That period of time is extremely vital, extremely important for us and our development, our growth, and our understanding of how we are going to do relationships going forward. And it is visceral, it is instinctive, it is reflexive, it is emotional. This is not our brain has developed as yet. This is before our brains have developed. And so all of this is like emotion memory. It is in our veins, it's in our blood, it's in our muscles. And that's why it's so powerful to dictate how we respond in moments of distress, in moments of fear, in moments of pain and hurt as we grow older, because this is like muscle memory. This is stuff that we don't have cognitive reference for. So one day I'm returned to Toronto, to my mother and to my father and to my brother who are there now. And I'm returned to a relationship that biologically makes sense, but physiologically, emotionally, it doesn't quite feel like home. It's not really my family. The feeling is that they're strangers. And I remember, because I can feel it right now, I was actually afraid. I was afraid. I felt abandoned. I felt alone because I came back. My Auntie Mavis was gone. And I can see the room. If I close my eyes, the walls were yellow. It was an apartment building. It was a room in an apartment. And I was just bawling. I was crying. And it was one of those cries that, you know, when you cry so much, your body responds and you're like, and you can barely catch your breath. I cried for hours. I was like, where's my Auntie Mavis? Why am I with these people? I don't know them. And nobody could really explain this to me. I'm a child. It doesn't feel like home. I feel like I'm among strangers. It's supposed to be a reuniting, but it's scary and painful. And nobody explains this to me. It's weird because I know that I'm loved and I know these are my parents and this is my family, but I'm relocated to another place and just told to stay there. And so it's confusing for me. And nobody is explaining what's happening to my body, my nervous system, and my insides at the time. But my body is reacting and my body does not forget. I say I have a strong rejection trigger, and you know, when there's a risk or threat of me being left or abandoned, or there's a risk of or threat of me like relocating somehow, there's a visceral internal bodily response to that. And to this day, I feel closer to my Auntie Mavis than my mom. And that used to confuse me before I started doing some of this work. Because how do you explain feeling more at home with someone who didn't give birth to you? That doesn't quite make sense, right? But when we look at mother figures, we bond based on attachment, closeness, that warmth, that consistency, attunement, somebody responding well to our needs and offering us what we need in that moment, and that sense of safety. And when that gets disrupted early, we don't just move on. We have to figure out a way to adapt and to survive. So growing up, I knew I could feel it. I felt it. I just wasn't really close to my mom. My brother was definitely the favorite. And then there was me. And nobody makes a formal announcement about that, but we feel energy. A friend of mine sent me a clip of a doctor explaining how a baby that had just come out of the mother's womb would not accept that the mother's breast milk, and was transferred subsequently to another mother whom that child did accept their breast milk. And after conversations with the biological mother, it was come to they came to find out that she actually didn't want the child. And so that was her energy, and the child could experience and feel that energy, and therefore was repelled as opposed to brought near to that mother. And so when we talk about epigenetics, we talk about transgenerational or intergenerational or generational trauma. We talk about these emotional, energy driven experiences of bonding, this chemistry stuff. There are a lot of unknowns, but there are also a lot of knowns, and a lot of curious and interesting pieces to draw information from as we think about the mother-child relationship, the mother-child bond. And I know I could feel a lack of energy. There was a lack of that attachment there. I know from experiencing the environment where the attention would go, where the positive attention would go, where the softness or the tenderness would go. And that was all towards my brother. And there was a lot of patience there. And sometimes you hear people describe parental reactions to their children. And there's a saying, oh, he can do no wrong, or she can do no wrong. It was like that. Like, he could do no wrong. And I learned very early that I just wasn't that one. Not because I wasn't lovable. Yes, obviously my parents loved me, but but it felt conditional. It was like, if you clean your room, or maybe if you score that goal on the soccer field, or you get good grades, maybe if you're a pretty girl, and you dress nicely in your dresses, and you recite your scripture verse for Sunday school well, or whatever. There was always this sort of underlying disapproval or criticalness. Let me say it like that. A lot of critical comments about my weight, or like, and this could, culturally speaking, there are a lot of conversations I have with people of Afro-Caribbean descent who say that their parents were fixated and are still fixated on their physical presentation, how their hair is looking, or how their makeup is looking, how their clothes are looking, and specifically what their weight is. So you're getting fat, you're losing weight, you're getting fat, you're losing weight. These are comments that are constant and consistent throughout our lives. But there's something that happens internally when those comments are voiced. There's a lot of comparison, and there are question marks, there are wonderings about ourselves, our worth, our value, our enoughness. And when we constantly are being reviewed, and especially on our appearance, my goodness, these are some of the things that we can't change. I can't change my skin color. What am I going to do? Oh, you're dark. Okay. Yes, I am dark chocolate, by the way. Tell somebody, say something to me. But there are comments, and some of those comments get translated down into the core beliefs that we have about ourselves. And those are mirrors that we grow up with. We don't just hear them and let them pass, we become them. And those words, those comments, those critiques. So for a long time, I thought I just needed to be better, stronger, try harder, be more impressive to be accepted. But I started noticing patterns. Today we're going to talk about some of the common ways that we behave when there's a mother wound in place, when there's something that was disrupted in the mother-child bonding time and period. Erikson's developmental stages is a pretty common overview of the lifespan as we develop. And so one of the first stages of development is trust versus mistrust. And so developing a sense of trust for ourselves and for others versus mistrust, which is that suspicion. And any form of mistrust can turn into hyperdependence on self or hyperdependence on others, or hyperindependence versus hyperdependence. If I trust myself, I depend on me and I mistrust others. Or if I mistrust myself, I'm more inclined to lean toward others and whatever they have to say about me over trusting my own intuition. When you think about the patterns that come up where mother wounds are concerned, they do fall back on things like, I can't ask for help, or I don't feel comfortable asking for help, or I don't trust that when I do ask for help, others will help me, or that their help will be sufficient for me, or that their help will actually meet my need. I don't feel like my needs will be met. That is a primary, if you're hyper, and this is me, if you're hyper independent, that is a very clear indication that something happened within the trust versus mistrust developmental stage. I thought to myself, I say it very often because I'm very aware of it, that I have a strong rejection trigger. But I have to go back and start asking questions about that. Like, why does rejection feel so devastating? This is a part of life. Some people have a strong disappointment trigger. Why does disappointment feel so devastating? What is up? What's going on with a very normal and natural part of life? Why does it feel like everything is so hard and everything is such a struggle and everything is so overwhelming? Why do I shrink back or try to be small or give too much or whatever the case is? So I started asking questions about what familiar ways of presenting showed up when a mother wound was in place. And I realized that most of us don't just have relationship patterns, we have mother wounds. And it's scary because I'm just starting to do this work. Thank you guys so much for being part of my process. And I don't know everything. But as I think back, I wonder, okay, if this is the case, what are the remedies that we have access to so we can help ourselves to heal? What do we do with wounds? We heal them. And if a mother wound is a result of a disruption or deficiency, and it can have a lasting impact on our self-worth and our emotional regulation and our relationship patterns and so on, then how do we remedy that so we can have help, we can be emotionally regulated, or we can have powerful, healthy, quality, revolutionary relationships, and we can feel a sense of peace and confidence in ourselves and in our lives and in others. I want to talk about what can create the mother wound, how the mother wound shows up, how we can heal the mother wound, and I think that's it. So this is all theory because I haven't walked through this. Okay, so what creates the mother wound? And I'll go back to my story. How it shows up, again, I know how it shows up because I've experienced it throughout my life. And then how to heal the mother wound, which is what I will be going through and what my process will be in the next 6 months or so, as I address the things that need to be addressed, that are scary and sometimes painful, but definitely need to be addressed. So what can create the mother wound? Unmet emotional needs, where our mother was either physically absent, they were emotionally unavailable, narcissistic parents, controlling parents, parents who were too authoritative, too rigid, too restrictive, can cause mother wounds or create mother wounds. And I want you to think about it very personally. If you felt like your mom didn't really love you, or she showed love to other siblings more, she had a favorite, and it wasn't you, that can create a mother wound. You might have a sense of, I am less than because my mother modeled for me that I wasn't as good as. You may have had a mother who was in addiction, an immigrant, a mother who was ill, and you had to look after her. So you were put in the position of caregiver. That can create a mother wound. Look at what is modeled and how it is exhibited in our relationships. Look at what default behaviors and habits you develop if you have to be now responsible for the person who's supposed to be responsible for you. If you felt like your mom only loved you when you did the right thing or when you did things that she liked, then that can create a mother wound. We're looking at this idea of conditional love, desirability, lovability, acceptance, approval, belonging. These are basic human needs that we require to feel like we are grounded in this world, like we have purpose, like we have meaning. And yeah, if you don't get those messages loud and clear and consistently, it's going to do something. There's going to be an effect. If you experience things like guilt tripping, gaslighting, mothers will say, oh, after all I've done for you, this is how you treat me. Gaslighting is like telling somebody that you didn't do what you know you did. And I've heard of these kinds of behaviors for sure. Definitely the guilt tripping. It was more of, I left my homeland and came here and gave up so much and sacrificed so much. And do you know what I was doing at age 20 and where I was and how much I'd accomplished? And you have so much and you're so much better off than me. And so therefore you should be so much better than me. And this kind of pressure, that was my experience. And perhaps a lot of other people who have immigrant parents, their experience as well. And not to say that we are to waste the privilege that we have, but it's the underlying message that we internalize that is the issue. And so this warm, encouraging, uplifting, validating acceptance is not offered. What do I need to do? And I have to work to get the approval or work to get that sense of belonging and acceptance that we all need and want. Yeah, those are some ways that the mother wound can get created. Silent treatment is a big deal. Withdrawal, so withdrawing affection, withholding affection, that is humongous. A lot of us don't realize just how dangerous and how hurtful, how painful silent treatment is. And it's a way of conveying that we are upset, but it's also a way of controlling other people's behavior. It's like, well, I'm upset. I'm going to be silent. I need for you to respond to my silence with pursuing me or coming after me or whatever the case is. But our words are so much more powerful in those moments. It's just really hard to access those words. So if we've experienced silent treatment, I know I've received silent treatment. It's like, oh, what are we doing here? Invalidating environments where our emotions are minimized or dismissed. If we've experienced that, it can create a mother wound. If we are not taught to stand up for ourselves, to advocate for ourselves, then invalidating environments can be extremely disempowering. We can turn into helpless, powerless messes in those kinds of environments. What else can create a mother wound? Emotional neglect, that's a big one. That is, I am not receiving validation, encouragement, affection, attention in any adequate measure. I'm not receiving, hey, I'm proud of you. Hey, I love you. Hey, you're good enough. Hey, you're doing well. There's an absence of that or very little of that. And perhaps in the opposite direction, more judgment, criticism, things like that. So emotional neglect can certainly create a mother wound. And again, I didn't really experience this one, but boundary violations is a big deal. Boundary crossings and violations. You don't pay for no bills here. You don't pay for the house here. I'm going to take your door off your room. There's no privacy. There's maybe too much requirement for exposure or just being open when parents are like snooping, when there's forced closeness, or oversharing. Those are boundary crossings and violations. And sometimes those can create a mother wound because it's like, I do need space. We have to grow and we do have to develop autonomy and things like that. And shame. Woo, shame, shame, shame. Any kind of shaming behavior, shaming speech, shaming approaches. If you've been shamed, and parents, if you're listening, if you are shaming your children, that is probably the fastest way to create a wound, to shame your kids or to have been shamed. Shaming like your body is this, your hair is this, your skin color is this. My mother is from the Caribbean and she may not even realize how her words around my Africanness created some identity ruptures for me. Oh, I have to lean towards my Caribbean side because that's better than being African. And it's so interesting to me because we're all African for one, but there's so much glory and power and beauty in all of our identities. So it was interesting. I was like, my mother married a whole African man and then in very subtle ways told me that my Africanness was not good enough. And I remember distinct just comments and kind of ridicule and laughter around this, even African music, like African like presentation, African hair, and me thinking about those pieces and internalizing them and then responding with a leaning toward what would get me the most acceptance or the most love. And that was leaning towards my Caribbean side. So those are some ways that mother wounds can be created. Some of the characteristics. So this is like how it shows up. And mother wounds manifest in ways that often impact our adult relationships and our sense of self-worth. So we have to look at it in the context of, okay, how's it affecting me emotionally, relationally, spiritually, psychologically? Think about that. When I think of emotions, 100% shame. 100% shame. Where do I feel shame? Where do I feel guilt? Where do I feel like I'm too much or I'm not enough? Where do I have this inner harsh critic telling me, you're so dumb, you're so stupid, you're so this, you're that? Emotionally speaking, we can hear and perhaps see and feel very viscerally where there may be a mother wound showing up. So again, here's me. This is what I know. I don't know everything, but I know I often interpret people's behavior and words as rejection. Very often I will find the rejection in it. Promise you that. It could be a whole joke, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't like me. It's going to be a thing. I have to filter through. That's my work to do. I have to filter through that every time. Feeling like I'm not enough or I'm unlovable or undesirable on some level. Yeah, I have that. It comes, it goes. Harsh inner critic. Ooh, my inner critic. You don't even want to hear my inner critic. I say some things to myself I wouldn't even want to say out loud. I can't even say them. Constant. And I know it comes from those seeds of criticism that were planted. Again, non-intentionally, but the reality is they were said and they were real. So I know those are some ways emotionally that it shows up for me. And of course, shame. I've recently come to realize that I've grown in trusting my emotions, trusting myself, but I have struggled with that over time. So even having a trust for my emotions and what I feel and developing awareness around that has been a growth arc for me, a learning curve for me. So those are some ways that it can show up in our emotions, some ways that it can show up in our relationships. And y'all need to hear this stuff because we sometimes think that we're just the way we are. People are just the way they are. No, these patterns they stem from somewhere. There's tentacles that are attached back to a lot of our early childhood experiences and things that we either did get or didn't get. And we're now trying to get those things, and we don't even realize that our behaviors are actually geared towards getting those things. We talk about people pleasing, we talk about avoiding conflict, we talk about difficulty setting boundaries, we talk about seeking, I'm trying to describe my pattern, seeking emotionally unavailable partners, like unconsciously, but as I look back, I see the pattern. Being concerned with other people's feelings over our own. And how can I say this better? Attending to the feelings of others over awareness of our own feelings. It's, oh my goodness, this person's going to be upset with me. But wait a minute, am I not upset? I'm upset too, right? So my feelings matter on the same level. So relationally speaking, if you see some of these patterns, you have to start thinking, okay, wait, what happened with my, I have to start thinking what happened with my relationship with my mom. Physically and psychologically, we have to start looking at how these mother wounds show up. So if you don't ever fully feel at ease, if you are consistently anxious, consistently scared, consistently fearful, you're constantly tense or flinching or what have you, and the other shoe is always about to drop, you're constantly looking for something bad to happen. That, yeah, we have to start looking for some of the initial seeds that were planted that grew into this way of being, this way of approaching the world as a dangerous place. Let's start looking back and seeing if there's anything that we can glean from there. And again, we're just looking at some of the ways that this mother wound can show up in our emotions, in our bodies, in our relationships. If we and we talk about anxiety, depression, any kind of mental health issues, complex trauma, eating disorders, self-harming. These are pretty clear indicators that there's something underlying going on. And it could stem back to this idea of this attachment gone wrong, attachment ruptures, attachment breaks, attachment deficits, this attachment disconnection somehow. So just thinking about that, like when pursue, I have done so many times. I've made an effort. In my mind, I've made an effort, and I've been met with resistance or with an unwillingness to change the pattern or to feel uncomfortable in the renegotiating of the relationship. And I have a visceral muscle memory of that. And so I don't even really try anymore. But of course, we're changing that because here we are, right? So there's a lot of insecurity around that relationship and life and so on. Am I good enough? Am I worthy of love? And how I respond to that is by seeking approval, constantly trying to be good, be better. And there's a lot of relational dynamics and patterns that I've seen in myself over the years. Codependency was one of them for sure. I'm an avoidant, so insecure attachment, the one where I rely on myself and I don't rely on others. I don't trust others very much. So that presents so many relational challenges because I struggle with trust, setting boundaries, competition, comparison, and then internal emotional dysregulation, not external, because I always seem pretty cool on the outside, but there's a lot happening on the inside. And so I'm looking at all these characteristics, how they show up in my life, and I'm thinking, okay, so how do we heal these mother wounds? Because this is a lot. And so let me talk about some of the basic things that we can do, and maybe I'll give a caveat here. Naming the wound is not about needing to figure out what's wrong with your mother. It's not about pointing the finger or blaming. It's about reclaiming ourselves. It's about reclaiming our sense of self-power, our self-esteem, because we cannot heal what we have not named. We cannot heal what we have not diagnosed, so to speak, or what we haven't said. I say to my clients often, we can't change what we can't see. We also can't heal what we can't say. We have to be at a place where we can say some of the things that are going on for us. And that is the first step to healing a mother wound. It's really to think about our story, recall our story, tell our story out loud, and believe our own story. This is what we experienced. This is what has happened to us. I think it's Oprah that co-wrote a book, co-authored a book, or co-signed or endorsed a book called What Happened to Me. I love that question. What happened to me? It's not I'm bad or something's wrong with me or what's wrong with me. It's what happened to me. And so that's going back to recover our story. What happened? So that's even me sharing with you guys, like, what happened? What was going on around the time of my birth? What happened to create that disconnect, that distance, that space between myself and my mother, aka that wound? And then do I believe my own story? Wait, that did happen. So now what? So go back, ask the question, find out your story. What happened to me? Believe your story. And then grieve. Grieve means, and communicate your story. So it's not just what happened to me and so on, but it's the telling of the story that matters, right? It's saying it out loud. Grieving is recognizing that within that story, there are things that you're going to be missing that you didn't receive from your mother. And you have to grieve. You have to let that go. You have to release that. And this, again, is theoretical. This part, the story part, I'm there. The grieving part is I'm there. I'm doing this. I'm doing this now. Grieving what I didn't receive. I shouldn't even say that. I think I've done that. I think I've done the grieving. I'm doing the grieving part actively. And maybe it's come a little bit more naturally as I've grown because I'm going to avoid it. And I'm like, I can stop trying to be lovable and stop trying to be something for someone, for my mother to love me. I don't know if that's ever been a real thing. But I think in doing this healing work, grieving is an important component. So we do have to release and to let go of the things that we didn't receive, that we didn't receive from our parents or from our mother specifically. And then we have to start recognizing who we are now, who we are today. And we have to start giving ourselves the things that we didn't receive actively and intentionally. So part of that means that we are actively creating relationships that are rooted in care. It means that we are developing self-compassion. We're acknowledging that our mother was not present there to offer us all of what we needed. And so we have to start soothing those parts that didn't get the needs met and reparenting. Reparenting means learning to soothe our own nervous system, learning to give ourselves, learning to soothe our own nervous system, learning to give ourselves the sense of validation, the words of affirmation that we needed to develop a sense of trust, acceptance, worthiness, developing secure attachment in our relationships, and forming relationships with friends and partners or therapists that offer that consistent, safe validation that we need to grow well and to develop, again, quality relationships. Tell your story, grieve, develop self-compassion, reparent yourself. Try to develop secure relationships, avoidant, disorganized, insecure relationships. We want to move towards secure relationships. And then integrating, so weaving all of this experience into our life story without it being defined by the pain. I'm going to post a resource below. It is the Attachment Project, and it gives an overview of all of this. It's very slow work, but it's possible, and I'm doing it myself, and I'm working with professionals. I am a therapist, and I do have a therapist, so that's important too. But all of these pieces, like self-compassion, setting boundaries, grieving, telling our story, developing secure attachment, all of this is hard work, but it's necessary work, and it's worth it work. At the end of the day, we get to benefit so much from all of it. It's a lot. I think the grieving part's hardest for me, but Again, I'm in process. I don't have all the answers. I'm just starting this journey. I will update you guys as I can. And my mother is probably going to watch this. So, Mom, here we go. Let's start the journey. I think one of the things that has really struck me over time was Mom saying, I notice there's an anger in you, or we don't have a close relationship, or I notice you're closer to Auntie Mavis than you are to me. And that being a realization for me of, wait, there's something there, there's something here that I really do need to attend to. And it's real. And I don't like, I'm the relationship person. So I'm like, I don't like having this hanging over my head. So part of it is motivated by, wait a minute, I want my relationships to reflect my internal passion and desire for quality relationships in my life. I want to practice what I preach. And I'm leaning in. If this stirred you, it's not random. It's not dramatic. It's not, or maybe it is random. I don't know. I'll say this. If it stirred you, if you are in the process, or if it's gotten you thinking, or if maybe you have a story around being sent away to a grandparent or to an aunt or to an uncle or what have you, and you didn't fully get to bond with your mother, and you find that there's contention and struggle, or you find that your relationships in general have contention and struggle, you can't get close to people, you don't feel vulnerable, you always feel ashamed, you're constantly guarded. My goodness, and this flows into so many places, not just friendships and workplaces and romantic relationships. This is relationship with the Lord, relationship with self. So yeah, allow this to be an invitation and permission to look more closely at this particular area of life and decide whether or not you want to do some work in this area. And again, it doesn't have to be a conversation with your mother. It's you deciding to reparent yourself, to address the pain, and to fill those voids that have caused you to trip up, to girl, leave that mother wound alone. We're not ignoring it. We are addressing it. And this is the finale of season 8. So thank you for rocking with me this season. Girl, leave that mother wound alone. We did so many girl leaves. So girl, leave all the things that are a part of your life that don't serve you anymore. Girl, leave. I am your host, Genevieve. This is the Relationship Series, season 8, and it is an honor to transform with you. I'll see you guys on the other side of leaving.